Hello and welcome to our weekly MG EV podcast, streaming live on Monday, the 21st of June at 7:30 in the UK, but Tuesday, the 22nd of June at 4:30 a.m. in Tasmania. The relevance of that will become obvious in a few moments. We're here to talk about all MG electric vehicles, the MG ZS, the MG5 and the MG HS. And we're hoping to inform and entertain you for about an hour or so. I'm Dave Stewart, username Dave S in the forum, and joining us on the MG podcast this week are owners from Cygnet, Tasmania, Jennifer Carroll.
Username is Tassie Devil. Morning, everyone.
Good evening. Thank you very much for getting up at 4:30 in the morning and on the shortest day of the year as well, just about over there, I would think. So,
yes, actually, yesterday. So, 21st is sort of shortest day, yeah.
Oh, it was beautiful sunshine out there. From Wigan, hello, Les Burrows.
Hi, I'm Les Burrows from Wigan, same username on the forum.
Great, thanks, Les. And from North Warwickshire, Dave Bell.
Hi, Dave Bell, FCAT53 on the forums.
That's great, thank you. All are welcome, and again, we're delighted to be joined by the Innovations and Development Manager at the Chorley Group, Miles Roberts.
Everyone, miles per kilowatt hour on the forum.
Great, welcome, Miles. If you're watching live, thank you for joining us, and please click the like button and join in the discussion in the chat window. A few of you are already saying good evening, and somebody has said good morning. That's nice. If you're watching later, thank you for choosing to watch the video, and please subscribe and get a notification when we go live the next time. In the podcast, we're going to look at a few, might give us a bit of an about this. Then we're going to look at media systems updates, what glitches we've said, and we get these updates installed. We'll have an update from Jennifer about the EV scene in Australia, and also Jennifer's very good at and has a good handle on is what measures, apps, etc. do we use to monitor our home charging, our cost of running, etc. And I wish Stuart Whitman was here. I am a total Luddite. I have practically no apps to monitor anything, so I'll be really interested to hear what folk use. And if we've got a bit of time at the end, possibly we'll look at silent running. It was an incident that made me amused, and we'll speak about that later. So without further ado, Miles, could we please have some update on the BMS, please?
Yeah, so on the forum, people have been asking, obviously there's a new BMS update that came out in January this year, which was to fix an issue with the previous update that was done in October. But some people still have the original BMS from when they purchased the car or from much earlier last year, and have not had no issues at all with rapid charging or cell balancing or anything like that. And so they say, you know, they're a bit reluctant to have an update because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But they wanted to know, is there an MG service action to apply most up-to-date BMS to all cars at service time? Yes, there is. So part of the agreement that MG has with its work is as survey, when a car is brought into the workshop, it's to be checked for any outstanding campaigns, any updates that need doing. And this is standard practice across all marques, and it has been for many years. I had a diesel Ford C-Max in like 2005, and that had a software update that was applied at service time. So this is not a new thing. But the idea is basically that they want all the cars ideally to be running the latest version of software, because if there is then later a subsequent update that requires, that the car requires, they need to know that it's going to be compatible with all the other ECUs and that everything's running the latest version. And so it's a bit like if you were to have your Windows PC on Windows 95 rather than Windows 10 or whatever, and you'd installed a new piece of software on it, there's quite a high chance it wouldn't run because it wasn't designed for that particular operating system version. So with cars, the idea is that when the cars come in for a service, or if there's in the workshop for any other sort of recall type event, then we should check on the systems, make sure that the cars, if there's any outstanding campaigns, and apply those campaigns that are applicable. And the latest version of BMS should be one of those things that's done. The second question was, will this update help to preserve battery life? It hopefully will do. It certainly shouldn't hinder it. By running the cell voltages a tad lower, and each cell is being run at 4.16 instead of 4.17 volts. So we are talking, a very, very small hundredth of a volt change. That should make a difference to the actual cell overall battery health, because you're not stressing the cells quite so much chemically. You're not pushing them to such extremes as you were before. So it should help to preserve battery life. It certainly shouldn't cause any hindrance. And then if the update is refused or not undertaken by an MG dealership, would it affect warranty? It wouldn't affect the warranty, but if you do have any issues where the update is refused to be done by the dealer, if the dealer's not carrying out the request, if you email customer service at mg.co.uk and give them the details of which dealership it's been, I'm sure that that'll get resolved fairly quickly. There are a number of dealers out there, and to be fair, there's some dealerships in the network who have different resources to, businesses like ours. We're very fortunate. We've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 dealerships now across the north, and we've got quite a lot of years of experience with electric cars, particularly. And that's different to some people who, they might have not had any electric cars. They might, prior to MG, they may have dealt with other brands. Some dealerships out there have got, for example, Isuzu and MG together. They don't have any electric cars at all. They're mainly commercials and pickups and so on. So it's quite a different clientele and different technology for them. So I think that overall, try to cut them a bit of slack, but if you encourage them that you would like to have the latest version of all software and they're not carrying it out, then I'd suggest that you drop an email to customer service at MG, and perhaps they might be able to have a word with the dealership or suggest another local dealer that might be able to help you more easily. Another thing, just whilst talking about BMS, that's all ZSEV related. I did actually just check on the after sales bulletins from MG, which as a dealer we have privy to, but they're not for general public. There are a couple of new updates which have come out. One came out on Friday afternoon. It's an MGHS plugin BMS update. So if we've got any MGHS plugin owners, if they speak to their latest dealership, they can get that service action carried out. It's BMS update which to prevent limited power is being run in E mode. So there's a worldwide had a couple of instances reported where it's gone to like a limp mode when it's been run on EV mode only. This BMS cures that issue. The other update that's been launched, Sales Network, is and these are service actions, they're not recalls. So these are, if the customers in do it, it's not, we're not calling people it'd be 100 miles each way to come and get the service update. So it's not a urgent recall or anything like that. But the service action for ZSEV infotainment system software update. So that's to try and so that will affect obviously quite a lot of users in the UK. Because there's lots of ZSEVs been sold. It's specifically for the ZSEV, not for the MG5 or the HSEV. And it's a software update to try and prevent screen glitches, crashes, that sort of thing that some people have reported on the ZSEV infotainment system. So it should stop it sort of cycling through the logo. Sometimes people have reported it just seems to be stuck on the cycling on the logo screen, or that it's just randomly restarted partway through. So that should fix that problem as well. So if you've been affected by that issue, if that's something that's previously affected your car, then it's certainly worth making a an appointment to see the workshop team. If, however, you've not had that issue before, it will get done at service time, but there's no point going, it's not a major, safety related issue or anything like that. So hope that answers.
I thought I was actually banned from mentioning BMS on podcasts, but we've said this before, and it's important to say again, when we're discussing the features of the car, whether they're positive or negative, we do actually want to share that for the good of all. We are not just having a moan or whatever. And certainly some of you will have seen my thread about the BMS when it happened. Again, Miles, you've lived through it. I speak to you almost every week about it. Can I just say I've come out the other side and the car's running absolutely perfectly. I've got 449 volts when I start up in residual every morning if I've charged up fully, and I'm getting 180, almost 200 miles on a good drive in this lovely weather. Sorry, Jennifer, lovely weather here. So, we do talk about things, but, we do also want to give a fair balance. We come out the other side. Dave, is there anything on the chat about Miles's comments? Or?
Yeah, Jeff Cartwright asked, are all cars leaving the factory with the latest BMS now?
They'll be leaving the factory with the BMS since January. Basically, as soon as they make the update available for us, it's already on the line with that version of software. Having said that, the cars take 3 months to ship from China to UK. There's a chance that they may have been built a month or two before they actually made it to the boat, because they stockpile cars and then ship them all together. So in terms of is it the correct, is it being done at the factory? Yes, it is, but we might only just start to see those cars this month. And it may be that, for example, that a dealership has taken a car into stock and has it sat in their stock for a while as well. So
yeah.
Les, you coming in?
Can I ask a question, please, Mark? You say the BMS, I know, doesn't really affect the MG5, or it hasn't done as far as I'm aware.
Correct, yeah.
But the screen, the infotainment system, the MG5 can do what you just described, I presume the ZS does.
Yes.
And freeze up or just go blank or different things. It can happen on the MG5 as well. It's happened to me once. And another time it happened when I was driving with the sat-nav working, and it just completely froze and I couldn't get it to switch on, switch off. I couldn't get it to do anything for a short while. And then suddenly it just resets itself after about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So is this update applied to the MG5 for that particular thing or not?
No, so they've not released any new software for the MG5 as yet. They are working on it. They are working on a fix for that, but it's a slightly different head unit, slightly different software, so it needs a different update. Okay. So we'll probably get notification of that within the next week or so.
Okay, I just wanted to raise that question, and whether it was all cars or whether it was just a ZS.
Another question.
Thank you.
Another question has come in from Jake Newis. I have AO1 BMS. Is this the latest BMS or EU one?
So they're actually exactly identical BMS. What they did was that the AO1 BMS was the Chinese product part number for the BMS, and then someone said, "Oh, hang on, because we're in the EU market, it ought to have a different part number starting with EU." So they literally just changed the part number, but it's literally the same software. The software does exactly the same thing. It's just it's an internal change of part number.
Okay, thanks for that. So yeah, thanks, Miles. You touched on it a wee bit there as well, but the next topic we're keen to speak about is the media system updates. And there's been quite a few chats or threads on this, folk asking if they can do it online, or do they have to go into the dealership, and what kind of glitches are folk having with. And I can't say I've had any disastrous problems with the media system, but I have noticed that, as you said there, Les, it sometimes switches off when you think it's going to switch on. Sometimes you get the MG logo. And another thing, and Miles, you'll roll your eyes again, well, I'm pretty sure that sometimes when I've got the aircon on, if I switch it off, it's easier to work the panel, and if I switch it back on, everything's fine. I seem to have a glitch, switch on the aircon, switch the aircon back off, and that seems to clear the panel, it works, particularly if I'm changing radio stations or something like that. But has anybody noticed anything else like that? Or
I've noticed various glitches with the software on it. Sometimes it freezes, sometimes the MG logo continuously loops. I've noticed a few different things. Like I say, sometimes you go to change the climate control and it seems to take about 5 seconds before it then flashes on the screen and says that it's changed, by which point you've already turned the heating to 28 instead of 18. So yeah, there are a few glitches with it, and I say hopefully this software will update it and fix it. Now, it's this software update that we're doing now. It's not a map update. It's not updating the actual quality of the maps or anything like that. It's just purely for the software that everything runs on. So in that sense, it's the actual, I'm looking at the bulletin now, actually says that the update should be done by the dealership in this case, because it's a service, because it's the actual operating system that's being updated. It says and it says it can be that they would need to also plug in the diagnostic tool to finish off the update. So whilst it's done on a USB stick initially to load the software, it says, you know, basically that you may need to also, and well, in order to do it, you need to go into the engineering mode on the head unit and things like that. And it's not the sort of thing that should be attempted at home. I know it is possible to do it. For me, for example, I've downloaded the update myself and I could put it on the USB stick. But I decided I'd wait for doing it in the workshop, because if I did it on the driveway and the wife's car didn't work the day after, I think I'd be less popular.
yeah, I think it was mainly the sat nav, wasn't it? There was an update in the sat nav that you could download through the online. Yeah,
there's an online portal where you can upgrade. You can download that yourself, and again, it's put onto a USB stick, and you put it into the left-hand USB port. It does the update automatically that way. But in terms of in terms of the lagging issues and things like that people have experienced, that's not going to be resolved by that software. You're going to need this dealer applied firmware to fix it.
Okay, thanks. Dave, I see you're scrolling the screen. Anything come up that?
Yes, an MG5 owner has asked about interim service. Is there a small service required, or is it just after the first year?
So the service, we had quite a lot of vehicles this last 12, 18 months that haven't done the mileage that they perhaps would have done otherwise, due to lockdowns, etc. The standard service interval for both the MG ZS EV and the MG5 is 1 year, 12 months, 15,000 miles. If you've done a particularly low mileage, and by low mileage I mean like less than 7,500 miles in a year, then there is a low cost, low mileage service that can be done. And we've discussed this on previous podcasts, actually.
Yeah, we have.
After the 12 months, and it's basically it's a lower amount of servicing that they do. They don't change the pollen filter, for example. They do, so there's quite a few things that they cut back on because they think, well, it's mainly an inspection. So you can speak to your dealership if that's the case, if if it is low mileage, but this still recommended inspection after 12 months. And I say at this service time, whether it's an interim service or a full service, they do any service action recall type, software updates and things. So it's worth taking to the dealership to get those done anyway.
Perfect. Okay, thanks. Great. Anybody else got anything to add on to that, or? Okay, so the next topic we're delighted to hear about is from Jennifer in Tasmania. Welcome back, and hope you're feeling a good bit better. Jennifer, a couple of weeks ago, John G from just outside Oslo gave us a great update on his view of the Norwegian market for EVs and what things were happening with government stances, etc., like that. Just wondering if you could just spend a wee bit of time looking at how things are in Australia and what your viewpoint is. And one of the things I was puzzling is it all Australia, or is it state governed, or are some states ahead of others? Or so how are things out there?
Okay, so Australia, we have, is it five states and 2 territories. So our most populous states are New South Wales and Victoria. So New South Wales has been in the news the last week. They've just introduced or thrown a lot of money at uptake of EVs in their state. So federally, countrywide, there is no federal funded specific EV program. So it seems every state is starting to do their own little thing. So it's started slowly with the smaller sort of the Australian Capital Territory, which is where our parliament is based. They started doing things, and then South Australia did something, and then Victoria did something a couple of months ago. And so this new one from New South Wales has been the most significant. So they're throwing a lot of money at the updating the charging network, which has been okay because various private operators have put a lot on the major highways, but the government's, I think they're throwing like $200 million at putting more chargers in. They've also waiving the stamp duty, which I think on an MG at the moment is about $1,300. So that, that's something. And then they've also offered $3,000 rebate if you buy. This is for cars. We have what's called a luxury car tax here, which kicks in about $65,000. So if Tesla owners, you're not getting any of this really. So MG ZS owners would be very happy. So you're getting a little bit of a bonus of about, at the moment, it's probably about $4,500 off the price. So it's significant. I know it's compared with what's going on over there, it's probably not such a big deal, but here it is very significant. They're also talking about giving EV drivers access to the fast lanes on freeways. So in peak hour traffic, if you're carrying more than 1 or 2 passengers, you can go in a special lane and get to your destination quicker. So they're talking about having EVs in that category, which is sort of interesting. They're also talking about putting in enough charging in the inner city areas. So for people who don't have off-street parking, they want to make sure that everyone within a 5-kilometre radius has access to a charger, which is pretty groundbreaking for here, because I know where I am. Okay, I'm at the other end of the country, but I have no chargers within about 50 kilometres. So it's that would be great if you were living in the inner city, which I used to do. We had to park on the street. There was nothing available, so that was quite significant for us. Hence, we didn't have an EV. So I'm a bit sad I left now. No, not really. Anyway, so that's quite significant for New South Wales. They basically want to see if they can push up the rate of uptake in Australia to about 50%, because at the moment it's less than 1% of cars are EVs. So by 2030, they're looking at 50% uptake, which should be possible, I think. We'll see. So that's been the big significant news for this week. I think the other thing was there was a poll by one of the major universities here of economists. So, the 50 most significant influential economists in Australia. So we have a lot of sort of free market, I'm sure you do there. Free market economists is like, the market will take care of itself. We don't need to interfere. Government shouldn't really be throwing money at this sort of thing. You know, people will go if they want to go. So they did a poll of influential economists here, and I think so it was 60 of them, over 80% said that there needed to be much more government backing on improving the uptake of EVs in Australia, which is that's good. So things are happening slowly, but yeah, things are moving on.
A couple of things there. There's an irony that you're given grace of the fast lane, which means you'll be driving fast and your range will be reducing ever quickly. But we've all suffered from that. But
all that with the climate makes me want to move to Australia.
Please.
I noticed one of your countrymen, and I can't remember which thread it was saying, "Oh, this is just brilliant. I bought an MG 6 weeks ago, and now they're $8,000 cheaper." And somebody said, "But that's okay. They're just going to charge you $8,000 in another way."
Yeah. Very possibly. Well, it happens with all sort of things like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Someone's got to go first.
So I take it if you haven't got a charging point within 50 kilometres, you've got to be very good at planning journeys.
Yes, I mean it's a little bit limiting, particularly in Tasmania, where we don't have the charging network yet. I mean, again, things are happening, but slowly. So yeah, we do have to plan. It also limits where we can go. So if we wanted to, you know, go for a bit of a holiday up on the north east coast or up the east coast of Tasmania is quite a famous tourist drive because it's we do have beaches down here which people actually go to, and so east coast of Tasmania is quite a nice beaches, nice forest scenery, but there are absolutely no charging stations. So it really it limits you, you know, as far as going and staying somewhere. You have to take your slow charger and you have to make sure you stay overnight and all that sort of thing. So yeah,
similar to how it has been in the UK for the last few years, really, to be fair, until it's only recently. Like I live in North Yorkshire, and so it's only this last 2 years that ironically it's getting to be the point where the cars now go far enough so you could go there and back without needing to charge. But for example, from Skipton, North Yorkshire to Whitby, it's the northeast coast. It's a distance of about 90 miles. And there was no charges whatsoever in Whitby up until 2 years ago. And so it was the last charge you could get was sort of York, so which was sort of halfway. So realistically, you know, when I had a Leaf 24 kilowatt that do 60 miles on a charge, it would be a very, very long day out because there weren't any rapid charges between York and Whitby. So you go from York to Whitby, you'd have to stay overnight, charge up, and then stop at York on the way back. And this sort of thing is what, you know, it's now resolving as a situation here in the UK. And I'm sure it will in Tasmania as well, but
I think so too.
And still you look at some areas of Wales and there's big black holes. Basically any area where there's more sheep than people, you tend to find that there's not as many charge points. And it's the same for North Yorkshire. It's the same, you know, but it's basically there's, you know, they seem to think that they only need to put charges in the cities. And, you know, a few years ago, there was, I don't know, something like 150 charges in Milton Keynes and 6 in all of North Yorkshire. So I think that in terms of, you know, the spread, the distribution of charging, it is helping now. It is becoming easier. It is becoming better. But also the fact that the new cars that are being sold now go significantly further than they did 5 years ago is a massive help also. One of my friends has just driven down to Cornwall this weekend in an MG ZS EV from just near us in Skipton, and it's near enough 350 miles, I think it was, there. But it's she's not done any long journeys, particularly in the EV before. She's not really used public charging networks before. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire for her daughter and mum going down to Cornwall. And the first charger she got to on the motorway services didn't work, electricity. But she managed to navigate to 5 miles off the motorway to a next available rapid charger. That was fine. That was it. Instavolt, that just worked on the debit card. That was sorted. But I gave her I gave my wallet full of all the RFID charging cards. And I said, I've got one for pretty much every network. Worst case scenario, just try each one on the machine, and I'm sure one of them will work eventually. But if that doesn't work, give me a call and see how, let me know how you get on. And they did the journey and everything, and they stopped 3 times before they got there in total. They stopped a 4th time just before they got to the accommodation, because there was no charging at the accommodations. They wanted to make sure they were full for the next day. But I said to them as well, so it's better to charge, for half an hour, 4 times for half an hour than 3 times for an hour and still, and be cutting it fine. So, but they said they've done it, and they're going to be coming back on Wednesday. So I expect a phone call on Wednesday at some point saying another bloody charger's broken. But the networks have improved. I mean, I drove down to Cornwall in a 24 kilowatt Leaf, and I stopped 8 times on the way down there in 2015 because the shorter range of the vehicle. The fact you can now do it in 3, and possibly if it was me driving carefully, I could possibly have done it with just 2 rapid charges en route. Just shows, how far we've come, really, in terms of charging infrastructure. I'm sure it'll happen in Tasmania as well, but it's good to hear that the government's starting to come on side there and do some more proactive work.
Definitely.
A few weeks ago, we covered apps for finding chargers, and I think we were discussing a better route plan app. And I was looking at it, and I love its optimism that says, stop at this charger for 17 minutes and take on such a, if I find a charger that's working, I am filling my boots. I'm fighting women off, and then you are not getting my charger. But I've just found so often you just think, okay, I've got enough to get me to such and such a place, and then something happens and doesn't. And it's a weird thing when you're driving to a destination. You're so sensitive and worried about, have I got enough charge? What I'm going to take on? When you're driving home, you're going to get a home charge once you get home. It's not such a big issue. You're quite relaxed about it, thinking that's great. As soon as even if I get in up the drive with 5 miles left, I don't have a 5 mile drive license, just before you wonder. But if you get home and you've only got 5 miles left, it's great because you're just going to leave it on all night and restore the battery. Yeah,
Definitely.
So that must be quite a scary one for you, Jennifer, at times.
It is. I must say we don't venture out. We haven't ventured out a lot. Hang on, I'll just get rid of the cat. We haven't ventured out a lot, just due to that reason. And also, you look on the app. I mean, these apps are fantastic for seeing what's working. Because if there's a crucial charger, so if we wanted to go from South Tasmania up to North Tasmania, there's only about 3 or 4 charges on the way, and if one of them's broken, it really it pushes your confidence. You think, I don't know whether I want to try that. So we haven't actually got to that stage where we have enough confidence in the charging network here. But as you say, it'll come. That's great. I wanted to ask. Another thing they were mentioning in some of these articles was making the installation of chargers in, say, new shopping centre car parks or even new homes, making that mandatory. So if there's a new home being built, you have to put in a charger. So I was wondering if is that a thing over there?
There is some talk of that here, that all new properties will have to be fitted with the availability of a charger, or be able to have a charger connected simply, without much expense. But it's not happening. Well, as far as I know, it might be happening on some new builds, but it's not been happening up until now. But it might just about be starting now with new build. It is with new build, and I think I did read somewhere they were going to do it with certain types of refurb as well. That they had to do it. They had to put it in by law. They had to put this charging situation in there so it could be used. But it's not widespread.
mandatory yet, Jennifer, but I notice an awful lot of the shopping centres and the large supermarkets are using it as a customer service enticement.
Yep.
I think Tesco's made a big announcement last week that every Tesco's they're going to open will have free EV charging for
Right.
customers.
Point.
I didn't realise that was the case, isn't it?
It's Tesco are using Pod Point, which is part of the VW agreement, and McDonald's and Costco are using Instavolt. We're finding now most of there's a big push by Instavolt to get into all the McDonald's car parks and the Costco Costa Coffee
All right.
car parks. They're trying to get into that. And of course, the other supermarkets are looking at this now, I think, and they're going to have to do something to catch up because people are not going to go to them if they can't. So you can go to Tesco and do your shopping for an hour and a half and charge your card up while you're there. You might as well do it, mate, if you can do it. I mean, my local Tesco didn't have anything till about a month ago, 6 weeks ago maybe, and now they've got 6, 2 of which are fast chargers, rapid chargers, I should say, and the others are 22 kilowatts, which can be used for free. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. But there's mandatory miles, is there? Or?
I was saying that, well, I know that for new builds, I think it's now that you've got to have EV charging depending on your local authority. So we've got in Yorkshire, it's one of the planning criteria for new properties. In Lancashire, it is also. So we've got some properties. Chorley Group has got a property company as part of its group. We also have a law firm. And one of the properties that we're doing is a renovation of a church in Morecambe. And one of the planning stipulations was that we're making it into flats. We're making like 14 flats at this church and like, hall that's behind it and things. One of the planning things is we had to have at least one charger per flat. And obviously the thing with flats is that you've got to then have some form of ability to bill the customer for them, because you're not going to have cables running from each of the flats individually down to the car park, a couple of 100 yards away. So so we've had to put in a separate billing system for that and different wiring. We've also putting solar panels on the roof as well of the church. So it helps to offset some of the landlord costs in terms of, the communal areas being lit and so on. So, and the charging as well. So yeah, it's something that is being brought on board. I know that the other houses are built in Skipton this last couple of years have all had provision for car charging, although often it's not a 7 kilowatt type 2 that you might hope for. Sometimes they've literally just put like an outside socket on it, and you have to upgrade. They're putting the wiring in for 7 kilowatts, but they're only putting like one of those Rolex 3-pin sockets, the outside, and then you can upgrade it to a 7 kilowatt car charger should you wish to. So there are planning conditions around various different things. I dare say different local authorities will have different rules, as seems to be the case with a lot of authorities. But I think certainly in our area, it's one of the planning conditions.
Jennifer, I had to laugh. I think it was Les that uploaded a YouTube clip of an MG dealership in Australia speaking to a travel journalist or whatever. And the guy was saying, I was thinking of Miles all the time. The guy was saying, "Oh, it's great. We've got this charging point here and we welcome customers to get a free charge and a cup of coffee." He went, "I told Miles to do that a couple of weeks ago." But
yeah, well, that's quite a big deal here, because I know there's our MG dealer in Hobart. There's nothing there. So, but I watched that video that the guy who does those, Greg, he's Electric Cars Australia, and he has quite an interesting YouTube channel. But I watched that video and I couldn't quite work out whether it was going to be free if you turned up to the dealership.
Yeah.
Maybe for customers who have bought there, but I don't think they want any EV person just rolling up, popping their car on and waiting, expecting a free cup of coffee, but anyway, we'll see.
Jennifer, I'm basing my holiday and coming down to the Chorley group just to get a free cup of coffee.
Dave, I'll give you a free cup of coffee and a cake, mate, if you come down. As long as you don't mind me staying at your house for 2 weeks whilst I do the North Coast 500.
Dear. Okay. Jennifer, you're going to feel as if we are picking on you tonight, but there's a couple of things in your preparations for today that absolutely fascinate me. And again, I wish Stuart Whitman and Sean Cullen were available, because I am just a total Luddite. Really impressed with your monitoring system. You've obviously got solar panels and etc. So you're making your own energy, as am I. But I have no idea what I'm using, what I'm bringing in, or whatever. Can you just talk us through what you've got and how much that influenced you going on to an EV, and then how regularly you monitor income, expenditure, and all that?
Okay, so this is quite a new thing for us. We bought this house last year, and it's solar panels. First time we've ever had solar panels. So it's not a new system. It has an inverter, which has a very primitive sort of LCD display of what the system is making. So you can get smart meters put in here by the electricity company, but I haven't gone down that road. But we signed up for a study with that the University of New South Wales and this company called Solar Analytics is running, and basically they're studying people's behaviour of what do they say? Aims to understand how households with solar and electric vehicles manage their energy use, and how EV charging behaviours affect consumption of solar, household bills, and the electricity grid. So I put our name down for this, and we got accepted. I think there's about 3 of us in Tasmania, and we had an electrician come out, and he fitted, some people might know the term, fitted these little gadgets onto certain of our circuits. So there's one, obviously. What was that?
CT clamps, they're called.
Yeah, that's it. The clamps, that's it. So we've got one on the like the hot water system, one on the air conditioner or heat pump, we call it here, and one on our EV charging circuit, which was a bit of a drama, because at the moment our only EV charging circuit is basically a PowerPoint that was running from the house up 50 metres up to the shed up above the house. It was a bit, the PowerPoint was sort of an outdoor PowerPoint. It's got the water pump plugged into it on a double adapter. This was how it was, double adapter, and then the power to the shed, which is where the EV was charged in, plugged in. So we had to get that modified. Anyway, the system, so it's taken a couple of weeks to figure out what's going on, because there were some issues with the data transmission from the fuse box. It wasn't picking up the 4G signal or something, so we had to get a little aerial and all this sort of thing. But it's been very interesting to see what we consume, where and when. So so we usually just, we've travelled, I don't know, since we bought the car, we've travelled 6,000 kilometres. So I was working out, how much petrol we would have spent if we just used our other car, and how much we've saved and all this sort of thing. But I noticed we got the electricity bill the other day. So I think our electricity consumption doubled, which was fine. I sort of accepted that, but we weren't utilising our solar enough. And that was because if we were going out in the morning, especially short days at the moment, we go out in the morning, go up to town, noodle around for 3 hours or whatever it was, come back. By the time we got back, plug the car in on the slow granny charger.
Oh,
yeah, we're not going to get enough power, because we had to go up again the other day. So, just from solar. So basically we were charging overnight, and we're not on a cheap tariff or anything yet. So this system, I think, is going to changed that in that I can tell what's being produced. It takes into account the weather conditions and all this, and whether your solar panels are clean and all this sort of thing. So it's going to be interesting. We haven't completely mastered how we should use it, but I think it pushed us towards, we have to get a home charger. So we're waiting on our Zappy. We're getting one of the newish Zappy chargers. So I think next month. So that's going to make a big difference to how and when we charge the car, because it'll be faster. So if there is only 3 hours of solar energy left, we'll be able to utilize that rather than just relying on the power point up in the shed. So it's interesting hobby, looking at your little graphs and, you know, there goes the little pump and all that sort of thing. So yeah.
When you get your
Les, do you monitor?
Sorry, Dave.
Sorry, Les, don't you go? I was just asking.
You'll get an app with it, and it tells you what your solar panels are doing and what they're not doing, and it'll tell you the best way to use it, really. But the only thing with the Zappy, I don't think it applies to you, quite honestly, but here, the only thing with the Zappy, if the solar output drops below 1.4 kilowatts, it doesn't charge. It's got a minimum charge rate, but I should imagine, I don't know, I would think you have a lot more sunshine than what we have. I honestly
not at the moment. No, not at the moment.
You're in the middle of winter in the moment, aren't you? But
yeah.
Generally, I would say for 9 months out of the year, you probably have much more sunshine than what we have. I otherwise anyway. But the Zappy's a brilliant piece of kit. Brilliant piece of kit. Super. Yeah.
Does anybody else, any of the contributors have solar panels? And Dave, no, or shake a head. Les, do you have?
No. I was looking at
best investments I ever made before I got the MG.
Yeah, I was looking at putting solar on our house, but I think I've said this before. Because of the design of my property, it's got a 2-level roof, and the lower level has also got Velux windows as well. So basically, because of the size of the panels and things, we'd only be able to get like a 2 kilowatt system, and so basically the lack of feed-in tariffs and everything else, it was basically not going to pay for itself for about 15-20 years, and I'm not convinced that I'm going to be in this property for 15-20 years. So that was sort of the reason as to why I've not gone solar. If the solar install cost became a lot cheaper, or if I got the roof raised up so that it was all one level and it didn't have the Veluxes in, then that probably would be helpful, but that would probably cost me another £20,000 on top. So I'm not able to do that at the moment.
This will surprise you all, but my ridiculously low-tech way of working out how things are going is we've got PV cells here, and we've got a smart meter, although Scottish Power didn't install it correctly, so I can only see my electric. So the way I work it is, if it's a nice day, and usually I charge my car during the day if I can, whilst the PV cells are working, I just look at the smart meter, and if it's going into distress, amber or red or whatever, I take the car off. If I'm going to be parked up for quite some time, I'm quite happy to rein back on the input and just leave the car charging for longer and not put the electricity generation under any strain. And that's working fine for me. But I would love to have all the diagnostics that you've got there, Jennifer. I was so envious when I saw him. And I know that Mike Fischetti Bean, he would be all over that as well. He'd write another PhD about it, I think.
So it's the same old syndrome, David. Every little helps, even if you only get a couple of hours or 3 hours, it's a little bit extra that you're getting for nothing, basically.
Yeah.
You're not getting for nothing. You've had to install the solar panels in the first place. Once you've got them, you might as well use it rather than go back to the grid.
It's tough going here. It's tough going up here, up in Inverness, though, because we've only got about 20 hours daylight just now. So,
I was just going to say, you've got about 20 hours a day, I said.
I'm just going out using up the battery and getting so I can charge up free. And don't say anything, Miles. I know you will be delighted to. Dave, can I pick upon you again, please? What's going on in the chat?
Yeah, not too much. There's a bit about contactless charging. And Miles and I have been replying to that in the chat. Questions about whether it's...
As in wireless charging rather than contactless debit cards.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that is key, isn't it?
Kim was asking whether it's possible if we could do wireless charging rather than having cables. And I just explained that basically the technology is there now, but with all wireless charging, so you might have wireless charging on your mobile phone, for example, but you need to put it on the mat pretty definitely. And one thing as well is that if let's say this happens, you can see that camera. So say that is the wireless charger, and you've got to position your car 100% over the top of it to get the full charging rate. Well, my parking's not great, and a lot of people's is a lot worse. So let's say that you park like that. So actually, only a third of the charger is overlapping with the battery. Then effectively, your charge rate's gone to a third already. Also, that's assuming the touching. What most of the time is that you've got the clearance underneath the most modern cars is sort of 6 inches plus. As you increase the distance between the charging plate and the battery, losses increase massively. And if you get to the point of 6 inches, you need to effectively turn the voltage and amps up on the ground massively so that you actually get anything useful at all in the car. If you were to do that and a cat was to walk underneath the car, it'd basically be microwaved. So because the induction coil. So it's not ideal. It's not a brilliant idea. Ideally, I suppose you could have some sort of wireless pad that you drive over, and then it centers itself and positions itself underneath the car and lifts to do that.
Yeah, Proterra buses do that in the USA.
But it's quite a costly thing. Certainly, it's not something you want done domestically in your block paved driving at home.
No, on the Proterra buses, what they do is they mount them in the bus stops. And they know the exact height of the bus, and they have like a sprung up push down mechanism. So it's actually pushed down close to the top while at the stop. As soon as the driver engages drive, it springs back up because it gets disengaged, and then it drives off.
In 10 years' time, we'll be wondering how we actually got by back in 2021. Ancient systems we're operating now. But yeah, Jennifer, and both those things, the way things are developing in Australia and your energy production and usage, if you wouldn't mind giving us an update in a few weeks' time as well, that would be great. And as I say, folk will be looking at that avidly. Anybody got anything to add to that?
Just
Actually, can I ask a question? So just with this solar energy business, so in Australia, solar energy is quite a big deal. I think we've got 3 million households with solar panels, which does have its problems because a couple of times in peak production periods, it's overloaded. If it's feeding back into the grid, they've had grid problems. But they're talking about if everyone changed to EVs, it would add like a quarter to the national power demand. And I'm just wondering, has there been much talk in the UK or elsewhere about the power demand on the grid as far as everyone charging their EVs at a particular time at night? Or
National Grid according to National Grid, the UK's supply network, they said that they anticipate that there would be a 10% increase if every single car turned EV. There would be a 10% net increase on the demand on the grid. However, with people using time chargers and with smart tariffs and things like that, where they're pushing people to use off-peak hours, the overall demand increase on the grid will be very minimal because at the moment they already have these lulls in demand where effectively they have to pay people to use the electricity or something becomes very, very cheap to use. So it would be it effectively just even out that demand curve really, and it just means that rather than having the peak at 5 p.m, we're going to probably have a flatter demand that's ever so slightly higher than it is now. But I think we've seen, because a lot of people in the UK, and I see this as a car dealer with cars that come in part exchange, a lot of people totally overestimate how many miles they do in their cars. The average mileage in the UK now is 7,000 miles a year. Sorry, that was in 2019 before pandemic hit. And I mean, a lot of cars this last year have got a very, very, very low usage. Obviously, last year, some people, done 2,000 miles, 3,000 miles if they're lucky. So I think that as well, the grid will improve with battery storage being used more widely. And I think that's going to help, to smooth out those peaks and troughs a bit as well. And that's, if I was putting solar in my house, I'd be putting a battery on it, I think, as well. I think it'd make most sense to do that. I think if you're going to put solar on, it makes sense to put a battery, and then you can generate during the day and use it in the evening, and smooth out those peaks and troughs even more. Or even, I had actually considered putting on a battery on the house just to top up overnight on the off-peak tariff, and then run off the battery effectively during the day. I think that might work quite well for me, even without solar. So that's something.
It would save you quite a bit of money, actually.
I think so. Yeah, I think, and it's a bit more portable as well. If I get a battery, I could potentially move it to a different property in the future. So that's something I'm.
Expensive though, aren't they? They're $7-8 grand, maybe.
Yeah, they can be.
They can be. Yeah, they can be quite expensive. There are some cheap.
The thing you've got to remember, you're talking somewhere in the region of 8 to 15 kilowatts, and that's your maximum. You're not going to get any more than about 13 to 14 kilowatts in a battery. So consequently, it's not really good for charging the EV, even though you've got the power in there. It can help, but you could run the house off it. If you was to top it up overnight on the
oh, definitely. So, yeah, my power usage.
The next day on it.
Yeah, my power usage during the day is about 11 kilowatts. Yeah, with not charging the car.
Definitely do it with a battery. And you can do it off the cheap tariff, as you say. It can be done, but if you've got solar as well, it's brilliant. My son's got about 5.5 kilowatts of solar on his house, and he's got a Tesla Powerwall, which is about 13 or 14 kilowatts, I think, and his electric consumption is 0. Very, very little.
Yeah, it's certainly something I'm looking into, because it's going to sound very middle class. I got a hot tub the other week, but an inflatable one from B&Q, nothing fancy, It's they're
on offer.
But I've noticed that the amount of electricity has increased quite considerably, actually, with that, just keeping it warm throughout the throughout the day or whatever, ready for the night. I've been keeping an eye on it, and although it's only obviously it's on a 3-pin plug, it's taking like 10 amps maximum. It does take 10 amps a lot of the time, so it is sort of throughout the day it is picking it is adding probably sort of 8 to 10 kilowatt hours a day, which typically isn't in the off-peak time. So it's typically doing it on the higher rates at sort of 13. So it's adding probably about close to £2 a day onto my electric bill. Well, a full charge off-peak on my EV is about £2. So I'm going to have considerations as to how we work this, really, because I'm also on a water meter. So it's not like I can just dump out, cut the water and refill it when I want to use it at the weekend. It'll work out more expensive as well. So we'll see.
I'd like to apologise to anybody who has tuned in if the image of Miles in a hot tub is disturbing you in any way. We will have a support line number at the end of the podcast. Dave, I see Michael Fisher has returned. That's good. Any other comments, Dave, about solar or anything on that?
There's a couple of questions for Miles. One on ticking steering. I think, Miles, you've seen that one.
Yeah, I haven't replied to it, sorry. Jeff says, a number of ZSEV forum owners have reported a clicking, knocking noise when turning their steering wheel quickly from lock to lock. Have your techs witnessed it? I believe they have. I haven't discussed it with them. I will endeavour to find out for next week.
I am one of the. I'm actually putting the car in 2 weeks' time, and I've left them, and they're going to have a look at it. Mine's weird. It's just so intermittent. I can be driving along, particularly at a slow speed, and turn the steering wheel, and I can really hear it creaking. And then something.
You want to show arthritis, Dave?
I'll put Epsom salts in my hot tub.
Nothing like that.
So yeah, I noticed that it's creaking away at low speeds particularly, and then I noticed the full lock. You get quite a bad bump full lock. So. Yeah, we'll get that looked at anyway.
The only thing I've had with anything with that, and a couple of people commented on the thread about it, is reversing when you turn it onto lock. When you're reversing, the brakes or
Squeaky.
something is squealing, and I'm convinced it's the rear offside rear. When I reverse off my drive and I go this way and the car goes round, and the weight transfers onto that rear wheel of the car, and I'm convinced it's that. It might do it. It's got to be stood for several hours. It's the first thing in the morning every day without fail. It does it. But then I might not hear it for the rest of the day. But if it's been stood 6 or 7 hours during the day after I've used it for an hour in the morning, and I go out and again in the evening, it may do it again then. But it is when it's been standing for a while. I'm convinced brakes. I'm convinced it's something to do with the brakes, and I don't know whether it's also got something to do, because, as I say, when you turn it onto lock, it does it worse. When you go straight back, it's just a little bit. When you put the lock on, it goes worse, and I think that's the weight distribution, because as you turn in the car, the weight goes to one side. That's what I think. Yeah, I've not been back to the dealer with it yet. It's just an intermittent thing. It comes and it goes. It's there sometimes, it's there not. So I don't know whether it happens on the ZS or not. I have no idea, but I know people have complained about it on the park.
Yeah, and it's not a biggie, but it is sometimes it is quite annoying. Just but
more annoying for the neighbours than anything else. 7 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. You go,
oh no, don't man.
What's that? Sounds somebody's just run over a cat or something. You know, it's terrible. It really is loud.
And Jennifer, was that a cat or a Tasmanian devil you were getting rid of for 5 minutes or so ago?
I think he's about as big as a Tasmanian devil. No, it is our cat. Yeah. We've got a fire here, like a wood fire. So he's discovered that this morning. So yeah, he's happy.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, Dave? Can I ask a question of Jennifer?
Sure, certainly.
Okay, Jennifer. Do you have in Tasmania or in Australia as well, perhaps? In England, we have I think MG. If you have your car serviced at MG, we are issued with a further 12 months recovery by the AA. Do you have a similar thing in Australia? Do they do that in Australia as well?
We do. I think I haven't had a service yet, but yes, if you keep going back to the dealer and having your car serviced there, you continue with this roadside assistance, we call it here.
You did that over there, yeah, because that's like a backup. I'm the same with my insurance company. My insurance company have a backup whereby if I happen to run out of charge, I was thinking about your charging system and the way you're a long way away from the next charger. If I happen to run out, or I've got to a charge that's not working, or I can't get a charge from anywhere, if I did run out, my insurance company is a second backup for me as well, because they do it as well. They have their own recovery system for EVs that have run out of charge. They come with a big van with a massive battery in the back of it or whatever, I don't know, and boost your car up with. I think it's a brilliant idea. Insurance might be a little bit more expensive, but I ain't worried. It's a backup. It's something extra.
Yeah,
you're on the same, Dave.
It's one of the things I really like the MG dealership that I use for servicing, so I'm always going to use them because and getting the AA annually is great. But yes, because I can feel Miles putting his hand to his ears. When my BMS was particularly bad, I was driving home after having the reversal, and I ran out. I didn't run out of charge. I had 5 miles left, and I knew the next charger was 20 miles away. So yes, we had to call out the recovery system and get that. And he offered me that I want just the zapper there for a good few minutes or whatever, or did I want taken recovered to the next charging station. I went for the charging station.
It must be something that MG do worldwide, I presume. If they're doing it in Australia, as Jennifer just confirmed, they must be doing it worldwide, with the Miles, I think.
Yeah, a lot of dealerships, a lot of manufacturers now offer this as a retention method for people to keep going back for servicing at the dealer. So Nissan have been doing it for a few years, and so have a couple of other marks as well. So it's something that we use as a retention tool to try and keep people within the dealership network. Obviously, if they get a service with us, they get breakdown service, which saves them effectively 70 quid or whatever on the cost of an AA membership. So it works out almost free. So
Yeah, it's great. Really good.
And it's the car that's covered, not the person. It doesn't matter if I'm driving it, my wife's driving it. Makes no
correct. Yeah,
difference.
it's the car with this. Yeah.
It's not the person, so that's good in that respect. Not individual covered, it's the car.
Hope you're not inferring that something would go wrong in the car if your wife was driving there, Les.
So she's not done yet.
Hey, can I call upon your good services once more if there's anything that we need to think about on the chat?
Dave?
Dave, are you okay? Dave Bell?
Hey,
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything else in the chat?
Sorry, I zoned out there. There's one hoary old one for Miles here. Any news on the MG emotion?
No, basically. You'll know if we do have news on the emotion because we'll probably do an entire episode devoted to the emotion. At the moment, no, there's no news. There's no news yet about any new models or facelift versions coming or when they're coming. But as soon as we have information we're able to say, we will pass it on as soon as we can.
Okay.
We've got a couple more people saying they've got the clicks and they're booking them in for checks. So
Yeah, I'll double check with my. As mentioned, I said I'd ask this service advisor and then come back to you. We're actually taking a break next week. I'm on holiday, and obviously, this entire thing would fall apart if it wasn't for me. Obviously, not that I'd do anything other than just talk. So no, next week we decided we're going to have a week off because a few of us are off. So I'll comment on the forum. I'll write a thing on the forum instead about the clicky steering wheel.
That's good of you. Thanks, Miles. That's great. So I think I've just noticed the time. We're coming close to overrunning again. Oops. So we'll carry over silent running, the pedestrian awareness sound that we were going to cover. So we'll pick it up not next week, but the following week, as Mel says. There's a few of us off, so we're going to take a week off if that's okay with everybody. So just a few things before we go, if I can bring things to attention. We've noticed that we speak a lot about the MG5 and the MGZS. Please, MGHS owners out there would really like to hear from you. We're very aware that there are the 3 MG EVs, but we'd really love to rebalance the focus that we put on. So if you do drive an HS or you're actively looking to purchase one, please get in touch with us. We'd love to hear why you're thinking about it and how you're finding it now that you've bought it, if that's the case. Certainly, I've seen some threads, some great comments about the interior and the finish, etc. a few weeks ago. But just how's it drive? How's it suiting your lifestyle, etc. Miles, you were saying most folk who look inside the cab think it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, no, I think it's most people generally think that if they sit inside the HS plug-in hybrid, they go, oh, this is very, very, very nice indeed. It's got seats which are reminiscent of what you'd find on something like a Jaguar F-Pace, so it's a really nice, classy motor. However, it's not fully EV yet, and we hope it will be soon.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as we say every week, please look at our merchandise. We've added quite a few things in the last few weeks, so please check it out. And to make it easier, there's a link to our shop on the forum menu, so please follow that up. Finally, if you would like to support us in another way, please consider the MGEV's Forum Premier membership for just £3 a month. And that gives you a Premier membership badge, the ability to upload a profile banner, the ability to select the MG Red theme, and a discount code for the aforementioned MGEV merchandise. And you'll get a full 10% of anything you order. So could pay for itself. And you know that you're helping to support us. So thanks. We're just going to wrap up there. So again, I would love to say thanks to Les Burrows.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you again.
Jennifer, thanks for joining us again from Down Under.
Pleasure. See you soon.
Dave Bell.
See you next week. Oh, week after.
Week after, yeah. And special thanks, as ever, to the star of the show, Miles Roberts from the Charlie Group.
I take offence that I'm not the star of the show. In fact, to be fair, I think Jennifer's cat was the star of the show this time.
Unfortunately, Jennifer's cat appeared just exactly the same time as you were speaking about cats being fried underneath the car, which I thought was a bit thanks again to Stuart Wright, who does all the knob twiddling and organisation that brings the podcast together. Thank you, Stuart. So we'll be back not next week, but the week after. Please remember to click all the likes and subscribes. We really do appreciate that. If you're not watching the podcast and you're watching Euro 2020, keep enjoying that, please. Unless, of course, you're Croatian, and I'm afraid we need the 3 points. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Thanks, everybody. Bye.